Hi guys, it's Josephine Hine, and today we are on another episode of Life of an Athlete. Today I will be interviewing
Rob Devon Butler, ex-NFL player, ex-AFL player, current corporate American.
So I will be asking him some questions about being a ex-NFL player and his life throughout his journey. So what sport did you play?
Well, I played professionally. I was a football player.
Okay, and so what lessons have you learned along the way?
Oh my gosh, so many. But I think the biggest lesson that I carry with me and I like to share with people is that the manifestation of becoming a professional athlete is something that I created at the age of 7 years old. I think the takeaway from that was that we actually create our reality.
Right.
As long as we take actions consistent with our word, we have a plan, strategy, we have a team, we execute, then you can pretty much be whatever you just about, right? You got to have the athletic prowess. But if you plan and execute, you can just about do anything.
And how have you seen the sport of football evolve throughout time?
So growing up, we're from Pittsburgh. We grew up during the steel curtain era. The Steelers that won 3-4 Super Bowls with Terry Bradshaw. So that steel curtain defense, being blue collar, it was all about being rough and fearless. It was about warrior ball. And since then, it was smash mouth, pounding ground, 2-back sets, and now you've got single back sets and sometimes empty backs and 4 or 5 receivers at a time. So the game has evolved tremendously. Plus, one thing that I say is the same is that defense still wins championships. But offensively, seeing scores in over 40, 45 points week in and week out, it's a much more exciting game.
And how, what would you tell young athletes right now, even with, all the information that you just told me, how specifically football to you has evolved? Is there anything that you would say that they could, better themselves future-wise in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think when I was growing up, I grew up on the East Coast, right? So it snowed, so we didn't get to play outside all year round, play football all year round. Nowadays, with indoor facilities, turf facilities, you can play football all year round if you want to, with spring ball and 7-on-7. Also, we didn't have position-specific coaches. Really outside of the quarterback, there was no corners coach or DB university or wide receiver university. Now, these kids can start at 5, 6, 7 years old getting position-specific training and expertise such that by the time they become a high school varsity player or even a collegiate player, they've been doing this thing for 5, 10 years.
Right.
And so the advice I give young people is find your passion, find your position early. Consult your talent, your God-given talent. Also consult your measurables, right? If you're a short kid and your parents were short, chances are you're not going to be a tall guy. So you might not want to go play wide receiver or think you're going to be a quarterback if your max height is 5'8". You know what I mean?
Right.
So just be honest about your DNA, and then look at your talent, and then get with your parents and coaches to help you elevate your skills. It's a skills game. Yeah.
And is there any sort of specific person, family-wise, or just somebody you've looked up to, you've idolized along your way?
Nobody in my family. I'm the first to go to college, the first to graduate college, the first to make it to the pros in any sport. So I'm the first of many in my sort of lineage. But there were guys around that were mentors of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Ex-Steelers. Chuck Sanders is one that became a mentor of mine, was a former Steeler out of a D2 school called Slippery Rock. So that was sort of my local mentor, local hero that was near and dear to me, took me under his wing. But from an athlete perspective, Deion Sanders was prime time. Prime time was my guy growing up, and then I actually had an opportunity to play with him when I was with the Ravens in 05, 06. He was on that team. So I actually got to play with my childhood idol, which was super cool.
That's so cool. And was there any sort of breakthrough moment, whether that was at your youth stage, high school stage, college, NFL?
I would say there are several breakthroughs at each level.
Right.
But I hate to say it, most of the breakthroughs occurred in retrospect, after I was done.
Right.
Right.
Analyzing it.
Yeah, looking back in the rearview mirror, you're like, man, if I would have knew then what I know now, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But one thing in particular that jumps out at me is my rookie season in San Diego was 04. So we drafted Phillip Rivers in the first round. I was an undrafted free agent. I told myself that I was cut, but not from a negative place. It was like, dude, they're bringing you in as a camp body. They're only bringing you in to beat you up, and then they're going to send you home in August. But I told myself, that's what they think.
Right.
I have other plans. I'm cut, but I got to get myself uncut every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do something to stand out every day. I had to do the things that the guys who started didn't want to do, like play special teams and bust my ass. You got to give 150%, be the first guy there, last guy to leave. And so long story short, I made that team as a rookie. I played 1 year of safety in college.
Wow.
So to make an NFL roster with just 1 year, remember I talked about the skills and the position-specific stuff, that's just raw athleticism and potential that got me there. Fast forward 2 years, I get released, end up going to Baltimore Ravens. We signed a free agent to a big contract, and we drafted a safety in the 3rd round. So that's 2 guys, plus Ed Reed, and our coach told us that we're only keeping three safeties. And I said to myself in that moment, I'm out.
Right.
Ed Reed's going to be 1. Jerome Sapp from Notre Dame will be 2. DeJuan Landry from LSU. Oh, no, he went to Georgia Tech. His brother, LaRon Landry, went to LSU. DeJuan Landry went to Georgia Tech. He's number 3. They drafted him. They gave him a sign-on bonus. I'm out. What I learned is that the mind is such a powerful thing that if you can see it, dream it, think it, believe it, you can make it happen. And what I did was I played myself off that team.
Right.
I did the exact opposite of what I did the year before. 2 years before, I said I'm not going to get cut. I am going to make this team. And I proved it every day.
Right.
In that situation, even having that experience, I allowed my mind, my mental to slip into a disempowered place.
Right.
And played my way off the team. I was starting.
Wow.
And played my way off the team. It was me and Ed Reed in the back end. Me, Ed Reed, Chris McAllister, Samari Rowe. Like, these guys are legends. And Ray Lewis, of course, was playing middle linebacker. I played myself off the team and was all up here.
Wow. And I think like this next question kind of corresponds to how you answered the question before, like what challenges have you endured? So I'm guessing like the whole mentality and mindset of being an athlete or just like living life every day is very important and very crucial, like before you work on like your physicality of like your sport
Right.
or just like your overall self, but having that mindset and setting goals and like trying to attain them and working hard for them is like in comparison like they both balance out in order to like reach the goals that one wants to reach.
100%.
So I'm assuming like you having to work on that mindset has like led you to like achieve the goals that you have.
100%. So it's people watch the game
Right.
and they look at the guys are huge, they train all the time, they're giants, they're super fast, they jump high, and you think because the product that you're looking at that is based on the physicality.
Yeah.
But it really is based on the mental.
Right.
I would say, you always hear it's like 90% mental, 10% physical. That sounds crazy, but that's probably true.
It's facts.
It's facts, especially at the professional level.
Right.
Because everybody's talented physically.
Right.
Just about everybody is talented. Just about everybody's fast at their
Yeah.
position. Just about everybody's big. But the thing that separates, the Hall of Famers from the starters and the starters from the backups and the backups from the practice squad guys and the guys that are off teams, it's up here.
Right. So next question is, how have you evolved in like the fatherhood of like the sport that you're in? Like how do you kind of almost teach your kids, or how do you look at the youth as like a father now, and how you like portray your life learnings?
Yeah, so I think, at least I'm biased because it's a sport I love. I think football is the greatest transferable to life skills sport, right? Some people may argue that basketball or whatever, but like football is the ultimate team sport. Marriage is the ultimate like life sport. Family is like the ultimate life sport. And so, it really comes down to the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It really comes down to being selfless. It comes down to knowing your role and doing your job. These are all things that I got from football.
Right.
That carried over to my being a husband, which I became a husband at 21 years old. I was a father at 19 years old. Of 2 at 19 years old. And so the things that I give to the kids from that perspective, life perspective, are the things that are going to make them better men.
Right.
better husbands, better fathers, better contributors to society as a whole. So I always make the opportunity, whenever there's an opportunity to connect the dots between what we're doing on the field from a philosophical perspective and transfer that into a life perspective, whether it's starting a business, trying to get a job, becoming a husband, a father, etc. Always make those connections right there in the moment so that they can start wrapping their minds around this sort of sports to life transition, or how these things are transferable. So I don't know. That's probably, if the X's and O's are exciting, strategy is exciting, but the mentorship through the game of football with the correlation of life is probably one of the most exciting, exhilarating parts of coaching for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you would like redo in any certain way in your past that you feel like, oh, now you look at your current self and you're oh, I wish I may have taken this route, or
While I could say that maybe not having kids so young, having kids young was a struggle bus for a long time. But besides that, I think I go back to the moment where I talked myself out of a job. I would have had a couple things. I would have had unshakable confidence in myself because I knew what I was capable of, but I let the circumstances mess with my head.
Yeah.
And I'm owning that. It's not like they did something to me. No, the circumstances were what they were, and I made it mean something about me that wasn't empowering. And I was unconscious to the fact that I was doing that in that season. That's one thing. Another thing I would do is, oh, you're getting exclusive here. Anybody watching, if anybody gets to see this that is an athlete, talked about it earlier, 90% mental, 10% physical. I would have definitely watched more film. I relied on my athletic prowess because I was typically bigger and stronger and faster than most of the people on my unit. But I saw people who were less athletic, but they had better anticipatory skills as a direct result of them watching more film.
Yeah.
So I would have put way more hours in the classroom when it came to studying the game, knowing what I had to do and what everybody else had to do, knowing what the opposition was doing and studying the tendencies, down and distance, ball in the left hash, ball in the right hash, ball in the middle. What do they do in this area of the field? What do they do in this personnel groupings? All of those details. I would have became meticulous about those things, and then I could have allowed my athleticism to take over on top of having that mental stability. So those are the two things I would change.
And okay, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but about the concept of sports. So now with the whole NIL deals and whatnot, what are your thoughts of it? Do you feel like it's changed college sports for the better or worse?
Oh, that's a good question. College sports, NIL in conjunction with transfer portal.
Yeah.
College athletics will never be the same.
Yeah.
Now, as an athlete who played in the era of a scholarship athlete couldn't work, on the surface it's like, oh, this is great, right? This is the right thing to do for the kids. They should capitalize off their name, image, and likeness. These institutions have been making millions off these kids' backs for decades, and it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. But now, college football has become free agency.
Yeah.
100%. You as a fan, you have to love a team.
Of course.
You can no longer love an individual. Or it's like either or, right? Because if you love the team is the team. You're gonna ride with that team, win, lose, or draw, rain, snow, sleet, shine, hail.
Or do you think it's changed like the concept of like an athlete, like back at least in your day, my dad's day, like transferring wasn't the easiest thing to do.
It was
whether
barriers.
that means that you could you had to sit out a certain amount of time, or you could do this and that. Do you feel like certain athletes now are gonna take the time to be like, oh, okay, now, you know what, I'm not getting any playing time, I don't like the coach, I'm just going to transfer and go somewhere else? Like, how do you think it changes the concept of them trying to build up and trying to work for that position rather than saying, oh, I didn't get it, I'm just going to go somewhere else? Like, it's like, do you think these same institutions like Alabama, USC, and whatnot are going to keep getting all these, like, skilled guys while these other smaller schools may not, like, be in the concept of these playoff contenders because all these second year, third year, players are just wanting to go to these other institutions because maybe they're not getting as much playing time as they want.
Yeah, I'm gonna attack that And I'm gonna tie a bow around the last question, and I'm gonna attack that because that's an important follow up. With NIL, the schools who have the biggest alumni networks
Yeah.
that are owners of companies that can put deals in front of kids and therefore draw the 4 and 5 stars to their institutions, they're going to get the best players on top of having a larger budget to recruit.
Right.
Now, going back to your question about no good deed goes unpunished. So that you can't just give kids money and think that nothing else is going to be impacted by that.
Mm-hmm.
So as an athlete today, if I'm not getting the play time that I was promised, and there's no barrier to me transferring, meaning I don't have to sit out and I don't lose a year eligibility, I'm going to leave.
Right.
But the impact of that is from a coach's perspective. So when you look at these things, you have to look at every stakeholder in the system, in the ecosystem. A coach then looks at a kid as more replaceable. As an athlete, you were already replaceable in the coach's eyes, even before the transfer portal and NIL, right? Certain kids were special, but most kids, next man up.
Right.
Now, where kids can say sayonara at any moment, coaches, by default, this is human nature, become less loyal to kids. So there's an impact where we were already replaceable as the talent before.
Yeah.
You're more replaceable now, and coaches have to be mindful what's going to happen if JJ decides that, you know, he doesn't like the program.
Right. Or just like even like I feel like now in today's day and age, I feel like now I'm going to be starting to see a lot of teams with seniors, juniors, and sophomores here and there. And like I know already freshmen don't really play that much,
Right.
but I think that these teams are going to be so impacted on like older, fresh or seniors and juniors.
That's right.
And then the sophomores and freshmen, it's going to be a lot harder to like work for those positions or those jobs,
Right.
because of the transfer portal and what it's allowed. And now you can just fill up a team and have a completely different team from once the season ends to like spring ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just the whole shape of it is just going to be
It's changed forever.
I think for sure.
Unless there's some, I think there'll be some governance.
Yeah,
They'll
has
have to,
be.
have to put, okay, you got to sit out 6 games, and you have to do something to slow
Yeah.
down, because to your point, if schools have become older, more mature, which football teams, they're like NFL rookies at 23, 25. I was a rookie at 23. There's 23-year-olds in college. What's Kenny Pickett's like 26, 25? Joe Burrow was what, 24,
He was like
25?
a fifth, sixth year, yeah.
You know, so when you can stack a team, just like stacking a high school team with a bunch of holdbacks,
Right.
double holdbacks.
Right.
Now in college, you got most of your starters are 22, 23, 24 years old
Right.
because of COVID and the transfer portal, to your point. And now where does that leave a freshman? Well, there's less scholarships to actually offer high school seniors.
Exactly.
And redshirting became a thing in the past because kids were being holdbacks and double holdbacks going into college as mature freshmen, doing 3 years and then trying to go to the league.
Some athletes now are like, even like the one that's going to be playing for Deion Sanders.
Travis Hunter.
Yeah, he's now going to a school where he's probably going to have eligibility to start and to play
Right
all
now.
3 years that he wants to.
It's true.
I mean, I think he'd go to any sort of university that he would go to, he'd probably have good playing time. But now some athletes are looking at like other options where if it supports better NIL deals or if it supports better like performance for them.
Right.
Just because I think all of this has happened so quickly in a span of literally like 7-8 months. So in 4 years, it should be interesting how much like statistical information, like how much, how many dropouts, how many success rates there's been, because it just has changed in the span of like an instant.
Months. I mean, the majority of the people in the transfer portal remain unsigned.
Right.
Right? And, you make a good point, because while NIL and transfer portal will pull the top guys to a select few schools, there's going to be some guys that are going to say, you know what, I'm going to forego money today, a big NIL deal today, like a Caleb Williams deal today, for the Travis Hunter route, where he may get a couple $100,000 because he's not in a big market, HBCU, but he's going to get drafted. First DB taken in the draft for 3 years. Yeah. This is going to start as a freshman.
I mean, I think there's like so many different alternate ways of like going through the process, and I think it just depends on like the athlete and how they kind of envision their future. But it's interesting now that there's like a lot of like balance and like weight as to like what people can do, a lot more flexibility than just one specific path. So this kind of like ends up concluding our interview, but if there was one thing that you could say to your younger self, I know you kind of brought up certain like life lessons, but if there was just one thing that you could tell yourself, what would it be?
One thing. I would say, don't quit. I would say to my younger self, you're going to fail, but the only failure is in quitting.
Yeah.
And I had enough. I had an injury that I could have got a second opinion on. I could have got looked at, maybe got another surgery to continue to pursue my dream, because I wasn't done. I wasn't done in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so to that point, I would say, until you're finished in your heart, until you're done in your heart, do not quit. Whatever it is that you're pursuing, don't quit until it's complete in here.
Well, I love that last answer, because I feel like it does mean a lot, not only to your past self, but just to people overall. Like if you're challenging something, if you're going through something, if your life isn't in the right spot as where you feel like it could be, there's always room to improve, and there's always one step forward that you can get to. And I think that there's always not going to be one end result. Like you can keep making these results. Absolutely. It's a path like along the way. But as long as you're envisioning those mistakes and deciding, I'm going to be a better person and work hard for the type of human being you want to be, whether that's an athlete, a musician, an artist, anything, individual self, is analyzing your life and just trying to improve on it and just be a better person. So with that, I would like to thank Mr. Rob Butler for your time and energy and allowing the viewers and people in my channel to hear his input and perspective on, honestly, like we got sports, we got life, we got fatherhood, we got everything in here. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to interview you, and I appreciate all the information.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.